It's now my honor and privilege to invite forward a member of our community, someone who, just in our conversations preparing for this evening, taught me so much. It's my privilege to invite forward Jill Samuels to share a little bit of Torah, a little bit of her story with all of us.
I'm honored to be here tonight. Temple Israel is my home. I grew up here. Religious school, bat mitzvah, confirmation, graduation, and extensive youth group involvement shaped my being. I am raising my children here. My family's involvement at Temple has been a model for me, most notably for this special Shabbat, my mom Sherry's time as president in the early 2000s, when she would so proudly introduce me and my partner, and my sister and her partner when we would visit. Thank you, rabbis, for inviting me to speak about pride. Thank you also to my parents, who are, for better or worse, but I hope for better, still parenting me. Their pride in who I am and who my sister is a gift without measure. When I was in college, I was talking to a good friend who was also in the process of coming out. We decided that the best thing about being queer was that we got to chart our own life course in whatever way we wanted, without the strictures of societal expectations. We didn't have to have a typical traditional life. We got to choose for ourselves. As an artist, a creative person, this appealed to me greatly. For me, this is the heart of pride, being true to oneself, honoring the divine spark that is inside, returning again and again to the sacred soul that is ours and ours alone. It is about listening to the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of intuition, and then living it. The trick is, though, that the wonderful freedom to chart your own course is laced with the pain of not being able to meet societal expectations. Meeting expectations carries a certain satisfaction and joy with it, a sense of accomplishment, a way of knowing you have met the mark. And that reward can feel unattainable to anyone who is other, anyone who has to write the narrative from the outside. We did indeed get to chart our life course in whatever way we wanted. We didn't have to get married and have kids because we couldn't. We didn't have to have a typical traditional life because it wasn't available to us. We got to choose for ourselves, not because of a drive to honor the divine within, but because there was no other option. I fell in love with Patty, finished school, and began to build a young adult life in Boston. Massachusetts in the late 1990s was about as safe a place as you could find, and we created a strong community for ourselves. But there were obstacles everywhere: personal, professional, social. You couldn't see them unless you could, because homophobia is in the air and the water. Unless you have the privilege of being queer, it's hard to see the privilege of being straight. Life marched on. Gay marriage was legalized in Massachusetts in 2004, and Patty and I got legally married. Freedom and love laced with pain. Homophobic family members on Patty's side led us to choose to basically elope. I was not a fan of making marriage the center point of the gay rights movement of the late 90s and early 2000s. The whole benefit of living a queer life was not having to participate in the system. There were more important issues to me at the time. I can't remember them now. It turned out I was wrong. Gay marriage is a very important thing. 10 years later, my marriage, my partnership of 17 years, ended in divorce. and I had the opportunity to face head-on again the challenge which being queer has given me, charting my own path. Within 3 weeks of our separation, I was living in an artist loft and trying to figure out how to get pregnant. If I couldn't have the life I thought I wanted, I was going to make the life that I knew I had to have. 1 miscarriage, 2 years of trying to get pregnant, and a stalled adoption process later, I found myself in a miracle of a situation. Despite my intentions not to, I had fallen in love again with Lynn, who was 100% supportive of my journey into motherhood and willing to join me on the ride. I became pregnant with Liat. I was working as an artist. I was building a new life out of the ashes of my first one, chasing the dreams that were in my heart. I was a trifecta of differences in a Bible Belt city. A 40-year-old Jewish divorced lesbian trying to get pregnant. To say the least, it was not easy to find the resources I needed. I eventually ended up with an open-minded enough social worker from outside of Nashville, exceptional help from the Nashville Fertility Clinic, and an amazing physician who was concerned only with supporting me as I was and helping me become pregnant. Do straight women and couples with or without fertility issues face struggles? Absolutely. But when the air and the water are filled with what you can't breathe or drink, it's just different. As a younger woman, I knew that lesbian couples trying to get pregnant or adopt were forced to lie to get the services they needed. In 2014, I felt strongly that I did not want to start my family under false pretenses. 6 weeks before Liat's birth, Lynn and I moved into a new house. I was concerned with getting I was concerned with getting all of our legal and financial ducks in a row before the baby arrived. Lynn came home from work one evening, and we sat on our back patio. I told her I had talked to a lawyer, and she said we needed to be married. Lynn said, okay. I told her it had to be a Jewish wedding. Lynn said, okay. We sent messages to our families to see which of the following 2 weekends they would be able to come for a wedding. I called Rabbi Bowman to see when she was available. We met with Rabbi Bowman the following week and got married the next Sunday in our living room, still full of boxes, under a beautiful chuppah surrounded by family and love. I don't think I've ever felt happier in my life. Liat was born at the end of July. Lynn returned to work after 10 weeks of parental leave. She lay down at work on October 10th. It looked like to take a nap. She had a massive heart attack and never got up. The next day, I sat on the couch in my living room nursing Liat. Rabbi Micah sat next to me. My house felt full of people. My parents, some friends, I'm not really sure who. I still remember saying to Rabbi Micah that I didn't know what I was supposed to do, that I knew things like this happened, I just didn't know they actually happened. And I remember Rabbi Micah said to me at some point during that conversation, something to the effect of, the only true death is that of a life unlived. At the time, the comment enraged me. I felt so angry that he, who had known me since I was 17, couldn't really see me and the devastation of loss I was sitting in. How could I possibly ever live my life again? Rabbi Micah's comment turned out to be one of the most important pieces of my next rebuilding. Let's go back once again to the heart of pride, being true to oneself, honoring the divine spark that is inside, returning again and again to the sacred soul that is ours and ours alone. It is about listening to the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of intuition, and then living it, just like the rabbi said. And so, not really knowing what else to do, I listened to my soul, to the rabbi. I brought Liat to Shabbat services almost every Friday night for a year to say Kaddish. It turned out to be one of the most powerful rituals of those early days. I felt seen and held by this community, and almost more importantly, I felt I deserved my rightful place in Judaism. Because I had already lost so much, I felt fearless, not reckless, in how I lived. I knew I wanted to be pregnant again, to have a second child, and so I prepared to try for a second child. I knew my current business plan wouldn't work for me long term, and so I went back to school. I got pregnant. I lived. With a lot of pain and a lot of tears and a lot of anger, I lived. With a lot of love and a lot of support and a lot of caring, I lived. Here are some nitty-gritties where the personal becomes extremely political. Were it not for gay marriage and that attorney's clear advice, Leah and I would have been left without Lynn's life insurance, without her Social Security, without the official acknowledgement of all that had been lost. Lynn's name is on Liat's birth certificate, albeit, I kid you not, in the slot that says father. We own Lynn's life and presence in our family to this day, not just because I say so, not just because I keep her memory alive as a blessing for me and my girls, but because the law says so too. And so this too is pride, being able to partake fully in the social constructs, constrictive or not only for the joy of meeting the mark, but for the security of what happens when it all falls apart. I own the word widow because I have lived it and I have earned it, and it is a word that everyone understands. So I'm rebuilding again. My daughter Liat is almost 7, and my daughter Linny is almost 5. We are a small but mighty family. I am teaching again, something I never thought I would do, but I get to choose. The heart of pride, being true to oneself, honoring the divine spark that is inside, returning again and again to that sacred soul that is ours and ours alone. It is about listening to the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of intuition, and then living it. Thank you.